Products. My name is Georg Ratzer. For those who didn't join the morning session, the poster session, which was really productive actually, and we saw a number of short presentations and the posters already. I'm a forest ecologist here at the Institute of Forest Ecology. I'm actually professor of mountain forest ecology, and I'm working mainly in the Himalayas and in East Africa, also on related topics. So it's a real honor to chair this session here. We are having a lead paper, and I'm going to introduce the speaker in a minute to you. And he has a bit more time, as you will see, and as you know, and you see the program also. And then for the speakers afterwards, we are having 15 minutes slot, and we're having 10 to 12 minutes presentation. And then we do discussion. And then, if we're good with time, actually, there's enough time for a final round where we kind of wrap up together and really kind of flesh out the issues that we came from this afternoon. If you are approaching the limit of the presentation, I'm going to show you this, and you will know it's 2 minutes left, and then just for keeping that in mind. Now, let's move into our topic, and it's a great pleasure actually to welcome and introduce to you Mr. Gil Azopardo, and he comes from the Lab of Applied Ecology from the University of Abomey Calavi in Benin. So he's going to give us general data and overview on the topic, and we're very much looking forward to your presentation. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, my presentation for this afternoon is about the non-timber forest products and the sustainable development goals. How this non-timber can be an alternative to overcome challenges we are facing in Africa in terms of sustainable development. My presentation, not working?
Again, it's not working at the beginning.
Okay, then here you are, the outline I'm going to follow. Firstly, I will briefly highlight the development challenges we are facing, we are experiencing in Africa, very briefly. And thereafter, I will explain a bit what does it mean, the non-timber forest products, and provide you with some overviews about them. And what are the proven potential of non-timber forest products in sustainable development goals achievement will be the third session of my presentation. And at the fourth part, I will show the extent to which non-timber forest products contribute to the development in some countries in Africa. And at the end, I will provide you with a take-home message.
Then it's just here working somehow.
Okay. So I will start with the agriculture sector in sub-Saharan Africa. What does it mean, agriculture? Agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa is about 70% of the livelihood. Then agriculture is very key for the livelihood in Africa. But Africa is about 25% of the world's Arab land, but only provide 10% of the global agriculture output. This is the fact. Secondly, we notice that climate change and ecosystem degradation are really key factors that limit the development of millions of African people. As you can see, depending on whatever the scenario, the climate change negatively impacts the development of the continent in terms of sustainable, the GDP. If you have a look at these statistics, we notice that Africa is far from reaching the zero hunger. And as you can see on the figures, we can notice that more than about 20% of the continent are experiencing the food insecurity challenge. And whatever the part of Africa, we can notice here that in Eastern Africa and also in the Middle Africa, we have the worst situation. And this is worsened by the COVID-19 and the Russo-Ukrainian war, which negatively impacts the food security on the continent. As a consequence, about 300 million of people in Africa experience hunger compared to other regions of the world. I think it is the pattern. You can change it. At the same time, the land productivity, as you can see, the crop yield in sub-Saharan Africa are very low relative to other regions. Look at about the cereals like maize, we are about 2 tons per hectare compared to the United States and the United Kingdom where they can reach 8 tons per hectare. All those are some key factors that limited the development of the continent. The current effort in Africa to achieve the sustainable development goals are insufficient. And we contribute to this paper where it is noticed that the sustainable use of food resources, including non-timber forest products, can help achieve food security in Africa. This means that this non-timber forest product from this paper, we notice that there can be a starting point or an alternative that can help moving the situation in a positive way. What does it mean, non-timber forest product? Some of us get confused about non-timber forest product and non-wood forest product. But if we have the forest product globally, they can be split at 2 main components. We have the non-timber forest product and the timber product. The non-timber are the most important, as we can see. Timber is just for woods, for exportation, and it is also very important to contribute to the economy and so on. But non-timber is everything apart from timber that can be extracted from forests. There are non-wood and also some woody. Then non-wood forest products are included in non-timber forest products. And globally, there are everything we extract from forests, like fruit, like leafy vegetable, like fiber, forage, like product used for medicine and so on. This, depending on where you are, there is no standard classification for non-timber forest products. This depending on your country, depending on also the objectives you want to reach and also the uses. Then sometimes the definition of non-timber is not clear enough. You should contextualize the definition. And we can come back on that if it is necessary. And this non-timber forest product globally contribute to about 6 billion people in the world, with half of them in rural regions in the global south. As you can see, in sub-Saharan Africa, depending on where you are, non-timber forest products are mainly used on nutrition, income generation, furniture, food security, and medicine. But it's not only in Africa, they are also used everywhere in Latin America and Europe, and also in Western Asia, where local communities and also communities globally use them for many purposes. There are plenty of non-timber forest products. For instance, in Benin, my team used to inventory about 200 wild fruits in the natural ecosystems in Africa, in Benin. We have in Benin more than 250 leafy vegetables. And these are really useful because they are zero-cost species. No chemicals, no pesticides, and very well adapted to the environment. This is very important to know because crops are not really good depending on where you are. Climate change drastically impact negatively the crop yield, but these species are well adapted. They are zero-cost species, the so-called bioresources, organic resources, and they are really, really important for communities. There are plenty, as I have said, and we have the leafy vegetable, which can be considered as sources of minerals and vitamins, but also the wild animals, like the snail, like, how to say, plenty of them, and used daily at local levels, mainly in Africa. Also, this leaf is called in my language form, and it is the language we use to practice in Benin. The most used language is form. These leaves give the name of my language to in my country. Then it is widely used by communities. Then culturally, they are also well accepted by communities, and also sometimes lead the cultural behavior of some communities, these wild resources. Then what are the current status of research on non-timber forest products of Africa, in Africa? As you can see, more and more, we recognize the importance of these resources. Then scientists everywhere in the world, more and more try to focus their research activities more and more on this. And there we have more and more information on these resources. And also we have a really high support from international organizations such as FAO, CIDA, International Foundation for Science, European Union, which recognize the importance of these resources and put their money more and more to finance research, to finance transformation, processing, and so on these resources. I will provide you with some key examples on research to highlight a bit the status where we are now for these resources in Africa. I will start with the most important for me is Baobab. And Baobab, as you can see, I did my PhD on Baobab. I published about 30, 40 papers on Baobab. Then I know a lot on this species. And I have here in the room the colleagues whom I used to collaborate on Baobab. Yeah. Baobab, we started the research on that few years ago. It is a long life species. which can be found everywhere in sub-Saharan Africa, can live 2,000 years. And what is important, all parts of baobab can be used for some purposes. The seeds, from the seed, you can extract oil, which is very expensive. You can find 1 liter of baobab oil about 150 euro on the market. And also the pulp. I'll come back on that. The pulp of baobab is the product which contain the most important vitamin C level in the world. No fruit has more vitamin C than baobab pulp in the world. No, you cannot find it. Then, many of teams, plenty of research activities are focused on this issue. In Western Africa, we have my team, the team of Prof. Shadari, Prof. Banda. In Eastern Africa, you have the team of Prof. Giba, who is here in the room, and also Prof. Florian. They are working more and more on the species. Prof. Yannick, and so on. Then that means worldwide we try to focus on these resources. We try to put together our effort to highlight the importance everywhere we can find these resources on the continent. As main results, as I have said, baobab is very rich in exhibit an antioxidant property a lot, several times more than kiwi, which is the reference fruits in Europe, and also pomegranate and so on. You can see the ratio. And in terms of vitamin C, it is actually 6 times orange, which is very huge. Orange is like a reference also in terms of vitamin C. Then and what is also really important, they are available for our body. And bioavailability, has been proved that directly if you eat, you have it in your body. And you can see the same for some minerals like magnesium, calcium, and so on. And in Africa, the team has, the team used to investigate, and we find that over 300 uses of baobab crop is found in West Africa only. And it is also an economic and super fruit, as we can see, because it is very rich in vitamin C and also exhibit an antioxidant activities. What is very important is that in 2021, we value baobab market about 7 billion USD. And it is expected that the market is going to grow and reach up to 10 billions in 2027. At the same time, we performed some researches, and we noticed that if you plant only 1 hectare of baobab, it is about 100 individuals, you can sequester about 72 tons of carbon per hectare. It's very huge. You can produce about 500 kg of pulp. That's been 25,000 USD per year. You can also produce oil from the seed to reach about 25,000 US. That means only this species can help to enhance livelihood and resilience of smallholder farmers to climate change, sequester carbon, and provide also money for the communities, means also contribute to sustainable development goals. Here you are, some more activities we try to develop. Now we want to move all these research activities to the community. Then we help community to grow baobab in their garden at home. we try to work on the grafting because, you know, if you plant a seed, you have about 12 years before having the first fruit. But by grafting, you can have fruits just the later 5 years. Then this is very important. But 12 years is nothing for baobab because it can live, as I said, 2,000 years. Okay, then 12 years just for fruiting is nothing. And you have the fruit every year. It's really important that as a key resources, we need to find some key resources on which we need to focus our efforts. With the team of Prof. Shadari here also in the room, we try to process and to transform baobab pulp to make it a bit more available on the market, well presented. And also this, for instance, is a product process with baobab pulp and also the so-called, it is a roots. We call it a roots of a non-timber forest product. With baobab and these roots, we can recover from iron deficiency, from anemia, the children very quickly. Less than 3 months, you recover all these children very quickly from anemia by just using the pulp of baobab and the root of Clopospermum tentorium. Both of them are really very, very powerful in terms of antioxidants, iron, magnesium, and calcium. Now, another resources, apart from baobab, we have other key resources. We have the Parkia globosa, which is African locust bean, which is also very, very powerful, mainly in the Sahelian zone. It is like this, the parts for these resources, and we used to work also on that. And what is really important is that there are very few research activities focused on such type of resources. You know, as you can see, even just 2000, we start something. It is very late because we do not know earlier that these resources are helpful and can be an alternative, as I have said. And more, we have research on these issues, as you can see. And we notice that the most important parts where research were undertaken is in Nigeria, where we have a lot of application now on the species, followed by Benin and so on. This species is also really well valorized on the continent. As you can see, they try to improve local resources, local food with such type of resources. Another key species is, Balanites, also for which I have 30 minutes, isn't it? 30 minutes.
Yeah, in total, yeah.
Okay.
With the
It is including the discussion. I don't know. Thank you. Then I will fasten my presentation now. Sorry. Then also Balanites is one of the key resources. I will just jump. And also this species is well valorized. You can find it on the market here in Europe too. Then what are the proven potential of these non-timber forest products in SDGs achievement? There are sources of carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, anti-nutrient minerals, and vitamins. And based on that, we try to analyze most of these species. Then they can very, very well used to prevent hunger and malnutrition. And this is very useful for the Sustainable Development Goal number 2. At the same time, it has been proved that these species are sources of energy, of protein, and also this is very useful for the Sustainable Development Goal number 2. About the Sustainable Development Goal number 3, as I have highlighted here. You know, globally, we have about 120 chemicals which are extracted from only 90 plant species. In Benin, we have 814 medicinal species. And there are sources of drugs where you can find them on the pharmacia and so on. You put a lot of money on them to buy, but locally and also in our ecosystem, there are plenty free, of course, because they are renewable. Plenty of these species also exhibit some antimicrobial properties, and they try to map where we can find such type of resources useful for this for the health and so on. Then this contributes also to the Sustainable Development Goals. Number 3, about the Sustainable Development Goal number 7, there are sources, plenty of them are sources of biofuel. And then we can use all those resources to improve also the environment and so on. There are sources of revenue, as I have demonstrated, through Baobab and so on. They contribute to 25% of the income of about 1 billion people around the world. And this is very useful for the Sustainable Development Goal number 1, zero poverty. The same is applied for the Sustainable Development Goal 15, land, where non-timber forest product can be used for land restoration, mainly the leguminous can be used to restore. They can be used also in the agroforestry systems to prevent soil erosion, soil degradation, and so on. About the gender issue, they are well involved. I mean, gender issue, non-timber forest products are key because they are really in the center of the debates at local levels in terms of gender. Then I will give you, if you don't mind, 5 minutes more.
2 more minutes.
Okay, then just briefly some example of you know, here you are. They provide a lot of resources for in Benin, for instance, to have all these resources that can be used to improve the nutrient of children by just combining them in the right way. You can really improve the nutrition status of the communities. They can also contribute to the livelihood, as I have already demonstrated. For instance, this shea tree that produces beurre de karité, the shea butter, contribute to about 2% of Benin GDP, and it is the 3rd product exported from the country. We have the honey. Honey is also very useful. Only at local level, we recognize that it can contribute to the revenue of communities till $200 USD for just small communities per year. And also we have mushroom, which can provide till 75 billion USD to worldwide. I mean, then there are really sources of revenue to the one involved in this business. And as take home, we are almost there. We noticed that non-timber can diversify rural incomes, it's true, reducing poverty and dependence on traditional agriculture in Africa. Secondly, we need to promote non-timber because this will help balancing development with biodiversity protection. We need to create the robust non-timber value chain to help communities to boost the market and also improve their revenue. And we need to promote in an inclusive way. That means also policy, research, communities engagement and so on, all those resources for the benefit of the continent. Thank you very much.
Very much. It was a fascinating overview to see these figures. Let's have one question in the interest of time, if there is one. If not, then I would have one. I mean, okay, there is one.
And you took it to the topic. It sounds it is as opposed to results from forestry or agriculture, because it would be plantation. So it's more collecting products from the forest than farming or doing plant cultivation.
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah, they are harvest. Otherwise, if you don't harvest, you lose it because it is renewable every year. You know, a fruit, if you take the baobab fruit, you need to harvest. Otherwise, you lose it. It's better you to harvest. But at the same time, we have developed based on science, research activities, some techniques to grow. At the same time, all those resources. That means to get them involved in the agroforestry systems, use in the agroecological principle. Then we try to also move this from the forest to the agroforestry systems, to the agroecological, to the agrarian system, and so on.
Okay.
Then both.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So Peter, I like the phrase of baobab. I have a small baobab tree in my office up there. Thank you meanwhile, and we'll call on you in the final wrap-up session. Thanks a lot for this excellent input. We introduce you the next speaker online with us today. Mrs. Feilam Mortiel will from the Center of Plant Medicine Research, Plant Development Department in Canada, with already heard quite interesting numbers and figures on the medicinal values of NKP. So we are going to have more, and I'm very for this. Are you with us? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hello.
Very good.
Can you share your screen?
Yes, please. I am doing that. Just a minute. Okay. Okay.
Yes, now we can see it.
Okay. Good day, everybody. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Thank you. My name is Seiram, and I'm affiliated with the Center for Plant Medicine Research in Ghana. I'm very hopeful that at the end of this presentation, we can learn and share ideas on how to manage the sustainability of our natural resources to improve the quality of life for individuals and community. I'll be presenting a review paper on the sustainable production of cowries research. This research was conducted prior to a research collaboration Agricultural Research Institute. And so this is my presentation outline, and I'll start by introducing you to the use of are used to treat diseases because they serve as reservoirs of compounds which offer a diverse area of treatment options for various health conditions with minimal side. Treating chronic acute ailments is very, very effective in countries like Ghana because they are very accessible, they are affordable, and they are effective. So they have become integrated.
Saidam, we have a bit of issues here with the connection, it seems. Okay, we lost it. Can you hear us? It's probably not with our net.
There's a network problem.
Saidam, we are not hearing you at the moment. Can you hear us?
Okay. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Only very
Please, I can hear
rarely.
you. Can you
Okay,
hear
now
me?
we see the presentation again.
Okay. Please, can you hear me now?
Yes, let's try again.
Okay. Please. Okay. Can I go ahead?
Please, let's try.
Okay. So I want to talk briefly about Capparis erythrocarpus. Please, are you with me?
Yes.
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay. And this plant is used in treating pain, arthritis, and many other health-related conditions in Ghana and across Africa. And contain phytochemicals that have shown promising potential for anti-inflammatory and pain relieving.
Saidam, we lost your presentation again. Let's give it one more trial, and otherwise we have to skip that. But let's try once more. Saidam, can you hear us?
I think I will.
Ah, yeah, there we are.
I will stop our video.
Yeah, please
presentation.
do so. Let's save on. Is this bei uns now?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we are not having the
Yes,
windstorm.
can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
Now we hear you again.
Okay, please, can you see the presentation?
Yeah, let's try once more. Please resume or try to make it short actually and wrap up as much as you can because we may lose you again.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't have the presentation.
Oh, lost it again. Okay, I think
Hello.
yes, you're here again, but we're losing you and we're also losing the presentation. So I think we may not be able to solve the issue. Do you have a connection problem on your side? Do you see that?
No, I don't. I'm trying to, but I can hear you.
You can hear us. We always lose you. We hear you for 2 sentences and then it's gone again. And so is the presentation,
I
actually.
think that's. Oh, too bad. Please
so
let me
sorry.
try for the last time and.
Yeah, let's try once more and then we'll. Ja, jetzt müssen wir.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, can you switch to that?
No, this is her screen.
Okay. We only see it half, so we see your screen, but with the Zoom window overlaying the presentation.
Okay. So let me just.
Yep. Yes, there we go.
Please, is it better now?
Yeah, and maybe
Great.
you
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you, and maybe you can wrap up. Try to wrap up. Sorry for that. Try to make it short.
Okay. So we use Caparis from the production of Serapac. This is a powdered product that is used in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis in Ghana. And other companies such as the Casapreco Company Limited and Class Herbal Center also process parts of the plant into products and appetite stimulants. So I'll delve into a brief botanical description of the Caparis erythrocarpus plant. It's a shrub about 6 meters in height. It has a weak and green stem when it's not matured, but it turns brown at maturity. It's much branched and thorny. It has fleshy and glossy leaves, which are alternately arranged on the plant, and then the flowers are bisexual. It has a reddish to yellow pulp fruit, which has brown seeds immersed in it. So Caparis can be found in the tropical and subtropical zones in Africa. So when we take a look at the African map here, we realize that the countries marked green are where we can find Caparis erythrocarpus populations in the wild. So countries like Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Northeast Zambia, Togo, Ethiopia, and many of them. And in Ghana, Caparis erythrocarpus is distributed along the coastal zones and in rocky areas, the grassy savanna, and can also be found growing in poor and dry soils. So this is a picture of my team and I on a collection expedition to collect some seeds of Caparis erythrocarpus. And the taxonomy for Caparis is, as we know, belongs to the kingdom Planta, the family Caparaceae, the genus Caparis, and has 3 varieties in the species level. So these are the environmental conditions for propagation and growth. So asexually, we cultivate it with the stem cuttings and sexually with the seeds. It prefers a heavy soil texture that retains water for a long period. The best time for planting is from April to June. And if the seeds are viable, they should germinate within 2 to 4 weeks. It has the ability to adapt to semi-arid areas and is highly drought tolerant. And so it requires medium watering and flowers from November to April. Comparatively, studies has been done on the roots, the stem, and the leaves of Caparis, and then we realized that the root has high amounts of secondary metabolites as compared to the stem and the leaves. But nevertheless, the stem and the leaves also has pharmacological effects that are also used for the anti-arthritic and anti-inflammatory conditions. So let's delve into the main issue with this medicinal plant. We ask ourselves, what are the challenges that are affecting the propagation, the sustainable use, and the production of Capparis for medicine and conservation? Our first challenge has to do with the low or poor seed germination due to its high seed dormancy. There's also poor rooting with the plants due to the lignification of the stem cuttings that is used to conventionally propagate the plant. There's also misidentification of the species and the varieties because they have morphological features that are closely related, and there's adulteration of the species due to its high demand and increased scarcity. There's also use of only the roots for medicine, which requires destruction of the whole plant, and this act threatens the sustainable use of the plant. And finally, there's lack of quantitative data on the phytochemicals present in the growing populations of Capparis. So as researchers, we want to promote the sustainable use, the production and conservation, and we aim to explore the use of biotechnology techniques to increase propagation and consequently establish large plantations for commercial purposes. And we have decided to use plant tissue culture, which has proven to be a viable approach to overcome these challenges that we are facing with the propagation of Capparis. And in Ghana, we have successfully applied the plant tissue culture for propagating 2 medicinal plants and other important food crops that we highly depend on. And there are also successful reports, according to literature, on successful micropropagation of Capparis spinosa and Capparis decidia. And so, as a research organization that is delved on improving the sustainability and conservation and use of such important medicinal plants, we have collaborated with the Biotechnology and Nuclear Agriculture Research Institute to develop an in vitro plant propagation protocol so that we can grow Capparis erythrocarpus via plant tissue culture. We also identified some critical aspects for further investigation, and that is to conduct future studies to identify evolutionary patterns that are key for conservation. We also want to conduct studies on the phytochemical content and composition of tissue culture derived seedlings and compare with the seedlings that we obtain from the wild. We also delve into development of molecular markers for the identification of species and biotypes to limit adulteration of the species. So in summary, I'll say that Capparis erythrocarpus is an important medicinal plant use and conservation due to the high demands, the difficulty with germination, and the slow growth rate of the seedlings. And so we have decided cultivation and consequently lead to the research on the comparison of the phytochemistry of species sourced from the wild and micropropagation. Even though we've had some problems with the connection.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Great. We just got the window of opportunity where the connection was good enough to get your presentation. That was actually very encouraging. Thanks a lot for that. And in the interest of time, we'll move over to our next speaker, who is on behalf of Pamela Ochogo, our colleague Tobias Landmann will give a presentation on pollen-diversity protein content in differentially degraded semi-arid landscapes in Kenya. Tobias Landmann is from the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology in Kenya. Please. It's a pleasure to have you here, actually.
Yeah, thank you, conveners. I'm very glad to be here. So my name is Tobias Landmann. I'm from ICIPE, which is International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology. So it's all about the little things that matter a lot. So unfortunately, my colleague Pamela Ochogo my PhD student could not come today, so I'm giving this presentation on her behalf. So my apologies if some things are not that clear, but you are welcome to contact me or her after this talk or per email to ask for more questions and get more clarity. So, oh, okay. So I'm going to try my best to make this presentation very comprehensive and give you an overview of the, let's say, the main aspects, take-home messages. Yeah, so we know that honeybees are very important. Well, in fact, a third of all our food comes from honeybees through pollination. So pollination is an important ecosystem services, especially by Apis mellifera. And the risk of this extinction of these honeybees is very great because we take away their food, their fodder, by deforestation, for instance, and also pesticide, which affects their well-being. If you look at the concrete drivers of honeybees decline or insect decline in general, see, okay, this is honeybee loss here, and it's caused by, of course, pests and diseases that we know, environmental stresses such as drought, and also their loss is affected by declines in genetic diversity and vitality as such. So what we did in this study is somehow complex. So it has a long history going back. So I'm actually a geospatial / remote sensing scientist, not a biologist. But what we did is we mapped different degradation levels in a place called Wingi in northeastern Kenya. And here we use sophisticated mixture or fusion of different remote sensing data sets at different spatial and spectral resolutions to map the land cover and land use, or let me say, habitats, rare habitats such as transition zone, hedges, residual vegetation within the agroecological landscape that are relevant for bees. And the sampling design is set up in such a way that we have very much degraded areas over here, moderately degraded over here, and we have two sites that we look at, each of these, and not degraded areas to the far left. Northwest. So basically, we did some sampling in apiaries or hives, representative apiaries that are, or hives within apiaries that make up each of these different gradings in terms of degradation level. How do we define degradation? In our case, it was the abundancy and diversity of natural vegetation as opposed to other stuff. So other stuff could be housing or could be croplands and so on. So this is how we define degradation in this context. You can see a picture of basically these three sites over here. Just in general, there was Momoi, Cassioni was the least degraded. It was basically intact forest, and we have moderately degraded here and largely very much degraded over there. So what we did is we basically, as I said, we used these colonies and these hives to do brood sampling and extracted protein from the brood, but also looked at pollen diversity and abundance within each of these hives. So as I said, the landscape setup was as follows. We followed an approach where we used Sentinel-2 optical data fused with Sentinel-1 radar data to create a data stack, and then using random forest or a machine learning classification algorithm, we extracted the landscape variables that are important for bees, did an accuracy assessment using basically reference data from the field, and we also calculated several fragmentation indices. So fragmentation is a very important variable for the habitat availability for any insect. So that is like how natural fragments within the agroecological landscape are connected and how they are isolated from one another in terms of distance, shape, and structure. So the objective largely was to establish pollen sources for honeybees within these different landscapes and link them to nutritional content via the bee brood, and also look at how they are contextualized in the surrounding areas within these nested units. The bee brood braid was collected at 3 hives in every apiaries, and it's important to note that we not only looked at pollen diversity and bee braid basically just from the different sites, but we also collected it for representative periods. I think it was from May to October, so spanning the wet season and the dry season. This is just the way that the bee breed is collected. The pollen diversity analysis was as follows. We looked at the composition of the pollen from each of these sites, looking at species level, but also at family level. And then we calculated some species accumulation curves for these that we're going to interpret and rank abundancy dominance models to compare the evenness across the all sites. And the question, of course, if there are evenness changes, does that relate to diversity of the pollen and the landscape units within this pollen was collected? Then we also looked at alpha diversity of the pollen and the protein for each of these sites, and we calculated the Rennie and the Kruskal-Wallis rank index. Okay, so the pollen diversity was also further looked at in terms of multidimensional scaling using the pollens and the tree species associated with the diversity. And then we also used a Bray-Curtis distance analysis to look at matrix to look at the dissimilarity between these sites to further explain our hypothesis that diversity of pollen and brood is different between the different degradation levels. So what actually came about the study? Well, quite interesting. This is the pollen diversity analysis versus the individual tree species. As I said, this is just an abundancy diagram, cumulative 100%. And then you have the different tree species. So this is not separated according to land degradation levels, but what becomes very clear that the Terminalia species, Acacia, some of the ornamental species coming through here are very important for bees in terms of what we find in the different apiaries, the diversity. And so this is important ramifications if you're moving into management of these areas, that you can say, these are preferences the bees go for. These are the dominant species that have to be targeted, have to be protected, are very important for bees and pollination as such. Because the more of these, the more pollinators are attracted to an area, right? This is one of the outstanding, most important graphs. So this shows the different, so these two areas here are very much degraded. These are absolutely intact, so primary forest. These are mixed areas where we have a lot of fragmentation, a lot of cropland mixed with residual natural vegetation. So this basically shows the diversity of each of these sites in terms of the families. Now, this is not species, this is families, and you can see the families over here. And you can see the old suspects here, Aster, which is basically like ornamental climbers. Then you have Barcea, which is includes the acacia trees, Combretum and Caparitio species. I'm not a botanist. Also this guy. So essentially this shows that the moderately degraded sites, as soon as you open up a site and you remove some of the primary forest, and you open it to more diversity of plants, more diversity landscape, you also have a more diverse combination of the different families that make up your pollen diversity. So this is quite interesting. Basically, if you want to make a recommendation, you say moderately degraded sites are actually very prolific for bees, pollen diversity, and the survival of these over time, because bees make use of different aspects of the landscape at different times. So they may also make use of flowering maize, which flowers typically, or let's say in different seasons as to the natural vegetation. So the RA models, so these are RA models depicting the loss of diversity. And you can see that for these are the high degraded sites, these are moderate degraded sites, and these are intact sites. You can see the slope falling off, and this is evenness, basically landscape evenness. This shows a little bit of a different picture. So this shows that for the highly degraded sites, the evenness drops off dramatically, or the evenness is somehow, the slope is not that steep here. That means the evenness is sort of something that contributes to the evenness of the species in relation to the brood, and the pollen means that these degraded sites are actually quite positive because the evenness retains a lot of the diversity. Yeah, so the NDS, the scaling, the normalized multi-domination scaling results show that these species, these are the different species, not the different sites, but these are just combination of what makes the diversity of the landscape, the diversity of the pollen, I mean, diversity of tree species and the pollen, and this is very clearly that some of these species had the most significant effect on the diversity of the pollen and the brood. So this is what basically explains some of the results in terms of diversity. So basically we did the sampling, we hit the nail on the head, and we basically sampled the correct species that explains some of the diversity in the landscape, and that matters to the diversity of the pollen. The protein analysis, I'm just going to show one results, but basically what was very clear is that over time, the protein analysis from the bee bread was quite significantly different throughout the seasons. You can see that May was very much different to January, June. May is the end of the wet season, then here we have the dry season. And here we have the beginning of the second wet season. So there was quite a difference in the seasons, in the protein content, but not so much spatially. I'm not going to show this now. And that goes to show that we must also consider the temporal dimension, not only the spatial dimension when we do these analyses. For discussion, what was most important, and it's going to be summed up also in the summary just now, it's quite, let's say, yeah, it's quite controversial, but you could say moderately degraded landscapes have the highest plant diversity, the highest pollen diversity from the hives, which seems to be quite a strange recommendation. The red curves show that low plant species evenness correspond to low diversity, confirmed by the Renyi Diversity Index, and this points to a slightly different picture, meaning the, let's say, least degraded areas are most important because they sustain an evenness of plants throughout the season. And the individual refractory curves indicated no sites reach an asymptote, and only 4 plant species contributed to at least 50% of the cumulative number of species identified from the 124. So that means even some of the least abundant plants do play a role in sustaining hive integrity or bee health. So as a conclusion, in terms of species level, Terminalia, Clomea, Acacia are the dominant pollen species that we found in the hives to be relevant in terms of the pollen that was collected over the season, and also for all of these areas. So these could be prioritized for any conservation actions going forward. And yeah, basically heterogeneous landscape consisting of both natural vegetation and of course croplands, sustained bee health, or I would say bee hive, the quality of the hive products that we have, very well more than very much degraded or very intact landscapes, except for the evenness that was quite controversial or showed a little bit the opposite. So colony strength in the region could significantly be established in these heterogeneous landscapes going forward, which could maximize the benefit for the rural farmer who very often relies on these beekeeping as a source of income. So with that, the donors, thank you so much for your attention.
Very interesting, and very much in line with results that we find also here with more open landscapes, of course, being conducive to insect diversity. Other questions? Is there one? Yeah.
I'd like to know this degraded land, meaning that man-made use by wasteland is over.
Thank you so much. So that is a very important question. So in this study, we defined it by the fractional cover of man-made landscape or elements within a certain landscape. So meaning more cropland, more housing development, more bay soil, as compared to fragments of natural vegetation. So that's hedges, residual forests, grasslands. These are all natural vegetations. So if you have 80% of these man-made, highly transformed landscapes, that's highly degraded.
Interesting result, because in Spain, for instance, we have the Dehesa, I don't know if you know the Dehesa.
Yes, yeah, sure, with the quote.
And the Dehesa is man-made landscape. I presume that this same results could be found there. Because on one side you have more forest, and you have this mix between cropland and trees,
Mm.
and then the degrading.
Yes, could be
Yes.
interesting.
And these are grazing landscapes, silvopastoral landscapes, actually, and
Yeah.
yeah, I fully agree. Actually, they do have a high diversity, both
Because this
with vascular
supports
plants.
It supports faster.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These results, I find them really very interesting. I don't know if it's possible to have copy of your
Sure.
uh,
Manuscript. Yeah, I can send you the presentation and the manuscript gladly. I will just.
very good.
I was just wondering, you just used honeybees, right?
Yeah.
Would you expect some other results if you use like, I don't know, wild bees or just kind of wild bees? Like, yeah.
Butterflies. Yeah. That's also very interesting. Yes, I would expect slightly different results because honeybees are domestic, like livestock, domesticated animals that farmers place in a landscape. And it depends on the species. Like honeybees do not rely on mature trees for their life cycle, like butterflies, for instance. So, using butterflies. So butterflies prefer very much the least degraded landscapes for egg laying, ovipository, and also the whole life cycle, basically. Also, the temperature gradient has to be quite constant, whereby bees live in these hives and they need this kind of nesting environment, and they're placed there by us, by humans. So, and they make use of the floral component of the landscape and space and time. So it's a kind of different. So I would expect other results by other species. That's why honeybees are not a very good indicator for landscape intactness as such.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
pointing to, that, yeah.
Mm.
Saying that maybe the intactness is not so important. It's maybe just for the honeybees.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good question. Yes, please.
From here and there ornamentals. Can you stress a little bit your degraded areas? Forms of gardens, like ornamental gardens or fruit gardens, effect positive and positive effect or negative effect or no effect gardens.
Yeah, that's a very important question. Okay, there are two elements. One is invasive plants, and the other one is, of course, vegetable gardens, which are not invasive. But what we find is a lot of the pollen comes from ornamental plants that are, I would say, not native. So they are planted along a tree, on a tree or a wall or in the garden to give a nice view, having nice flowers in the dry season, flowering plants that make your plot or your homestead more appealing to you and your guests, maybe. And these are, play a large role in the system, in what the bees collect. So the bees like these because they always flower, basically, atypically to the natural vegetation very often, or they are first to respond at the end of the dry season. And so these play a huge role in the honey production, I would say. Some of them are invasive and then they get out of control. So that's quite negative, but the bees really go for them, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We're actually presentation now by Mr. Biniam Abedea, who will talk about the role of advisory services in the commercialization of NDF bees in the Cerrado in Brazil. And you are from the University of Hohenheim in Germany. Please give us your talk.
So thank you very much for coming. My name is Biniam Abaina and I'm from the University of Hohenheim, presenting the topic of advisory services and the role they play in the commercialization process of NTFP from the Brazilian Cerrado. I want to start off by introducing the Cerrado, which is the second biggest biome in Brazil, in Latin America, home to a native vegetation and wildlife. But unfortunately, it's been faced with extreme deforestation, losing up to 50% of its current vegetation cover, and turning it into the country's biggest producer of soybeans, milk, and beef. It is the second biggest biome in terms of size, but also in terms of importance, making some people to feel as if it is being sacrificed on behalf of the Amazon. So while the world's eye is concentrated on the Amazon, there is major deforestation happening here. But fortunately, there are various projects taking place by the use of agroforestry, combining native trees with livestock and crops in order to lead to a restoration of the biome, but also generating of income for the producers. There are some solutions ongoing, and among the various determinants of the success, it is technical assistance and credits and other factors, but these two I want to concentrate on as they could be an indication of a successful advisory service. So my aim of the research is to understand what the role advisors are playing in order to support the producers in their effort of commercialization and selling these non-timber forest products. So the study area is in the northern part of Minas Gerais, in the 7 municipalities in Rio Alto region. I did a field study. I used a sampling method of stratified sampling to identify the producers from all the regions, from all the municipalities, and snowball sampling to identify the remaining stakeholders, which represent all actors involved in this system. Methodology of qualitative analysis by using social network analysis and thematic analysis, drawing from the extended food systems framework. So I focus on the value chain and national enabling policies, like government policies that support commercialization and financial incentives that are given out to these producers. So I will start off with the agricultural knowledge innovation system map. This map helps us to identify who the various actors are in this system. As you can see, the green is the advisory system. The advisors known as EMATERs in Brazil. The yellow is the research and education system, research and education institutions. Blue is government, orange is NGOs involved in the area. So I want to highlight 2 things on this map. The first one is the black lines and the red lines. The black lines is a strong linkage, 2-way communication where the actors are collaborating, there's trust and working together, but the red line is a 1-way flow of information. So we can see here various clusters. For example, there's a cluster of NGOs working together, collaborating together. There's research and education that collaborates together. Advisory services is working closely with government institutions, but there is a lack of disconnect amongst the others, meaning that there is a room to improve and to support the producers as optimal as they could be. The second point is advisory services is situated in a uniquely important position, connecting government bodies, government regulators, research and education, which means new knowledge is passed down to ultimately to the producers, and financial incentive, which is critical to make sure this system is functioning. So these actors are well situated. So any intervention needs to be inclusive of the advisors. So moving on to the producers, I asked the producers how much they rate their own skills in each value chain. And they rated their knowledge of collection and processing highly, but marketing and sales a bit lower, meaning there is a potential opening in terms of openness to receive support from the producers. But I didn't want to stop it there and wanted to understand what currently is happening with the producers, but what potential support to the producers can be by the advisors. So at the first stage, tree management, there is general lack of requests from the producers, but there's also a lack of support provision by the advisors, which I'll get on later on. But some of the ideas the advisors came up with is there could be a network established by bringing together advisors and bringing together producers, and by creating WhatsApp group as simple as that, they could share their knowledge that they have amongst each other, and the farmers are particularly happy to exchange ideas. So that could be one potential role. In collection, it's not just a problem of NTFPs, but a general agricultural problem, where the stakeholders mentioned that there is an aging farming population, and the youth is also migrating and leaving this for better opportunities in the cities. So it is important that advisors play a role in motivating the youth, sharing financial incentives to make sure that there is economic opportunities. They don't need to leave to the cities to get better opportunities. In processing, all the stakeholders mentioned that this is a critical stage to capture the value, but unfortunately, due to distance, due to lack of organization, pulling in their produce, they are unable to capture it, they are unable to process their products. But everybody mentioned that if there was a culture of organizing the producers into cooperatives, it would allow them to drive into higher sales or pull their resources, get better financial incentives to sell. And also group trainings, which they currently lack, would be able to facilitate and to give. Finally, marketing and sales. There are current marketing opportunities that are taking place that I've identified. Municipality market collaboration between the government and the advisory services is taking place. Peki Day didn't want to focus on each fruits of the Cerrado, but there are quite a lot. This one is one of the products there. It is aimed at not only connecting buyers and sellers, but also sharing the culture of the inhabitants, the culture of the people of the area. So that is taking place, but they are hindered by low organizational capability. The farmers are not able to sell, to share their produce and everything. But potentially, again, similar to the other steps, a network of people, a cooperative could be a good solution to pull the resources together. The other two things I wanted to highlight are government policy and financial incentives. For government policy, there was the PNAE, which is the school feeding program that feeds 44 million students each day in Brazil. And the PGPM is a price guarantee system. These two still signify as present an opportunity of commercialization in the short run. And the amateurs, the advisors, play a critical role in certifying and registering the farmers so that they are able to sell their products in this market. They are able to access the government, which is a stable purchase partner for the producers. So they have a role in providing that access to the producers. Financial incentives, there are currently already existing organic financial schemes, but more and more banks and financial institutes are interested in working and collaborating with farmers, producers that are engaged in organic production, which NTFPs qualify for. But most of the producers are unaware that there are financial opportunities that exist, which means the advisors are not playing that role of sharing these opportunities and also making them aware that there are requirements to access these finances. I said there was a general problem of request and support. This can be perfectly described by this. As you can see in the general agricultural knowledge, they derive most of their knowledge from advisory services, neighborhood parks. But when it comes to NTFPs, it's completely based on family. So a knowledge that comes from family is at risk of being passed to the others, which is also another weakness of this system. But on the advisor side also, there is a lack of manpower able to provide this service. With the regions I interviewed, with the advisors I interviewed, having to face or having to serve a large amount of people, a large amount of producers. So they were unable to provide these advisors or support they could. So in conclusion, advisors, although best situated, they are undertrained and understaffed to effectively support for commercialization. So it's critical that we find, or the system finds, innovative solutions to help them extend their reach and better support the producers. In the short term, it's important to concentrate on the currently existing marketing opportunities, commercializing opportunities, but in the long run, organizing them through cooperative could be a good solution. Thank you very much.
So, on the advisory system here, you said that you identified that there's quite a bit of a lack of knowledge on the side of the advisors. Does it mean they lack the botanical knowledge to know all these species that are used in the as NTFPs from that area? Or?
Yes, most of the training they are given is on commercial crops,
Yes.
soy, maize, and livestock production. So most of their training, even though they have the interests. So when I was talking, there were two groups of amateurs, advisors. The younger ones were interested in identifying like organic or systems that are from the region, but the older ones were concentrated in like, we want commercial farms, we want soybeans, we want coffee. That's the only way to increase the income of the producer. So there was like, most of their training is based on commercial crops, but the ones that are providing support, it's based on their own interests and support to the people.
Was there a switch in the education of the advisors?
No, I think it's just a general, like the young ones are more open to ideas. And when I was doing the interviews, I had both of them at the same room. The young ones would be more open, but when they see the older one, they'd just keep quiet. And so there was like a clear generational difference.
Yeah. But it means there would be a potential to kind of look into education of advisors and opening up their view to NTFPs.
Hopefully, yes, in the future, the young ones are more interested in working on that. Yes.
Really interesting. Thanks a lot. Thanks again. I think we have really fascinating insight into the potential of NTFPs. I'd like to know what I saw as one of the major topics that we had was kind of bringing NTFPs to scale, commercialization. And you pointed out the huge potential that many of these NTFPs hold. And we saw it in our presentation on the medicinal NTFP as well, and so on others. What do you think? Can I ask you? I mean, labor force is such an important factor. If I remember the results of the CIPOC released from the PEN, the Policy and Environment Network, showing the contribution of NTFPs to livelihoods and to income of people, that is as high as from crop farming, you know. But the limitation is labor force, and that actually gives an advantage to richer families. So there's a potential inequality thing here, because the richer families have more labor to collect NTFPs. Do you observe the same thing, and how could that be overcome, the labor shortage thing that also we saw from the results? Where are you now? The results of our last talk. Here you are, sorry. Results of our last talk. With the labor shortage and the youth problem. How do you see that?
Yes, you know, this resource is the most important issue is productivity. You know, they are wild, they are in the natural habitat. Experiences a lot of competitions. You know, in the tropical area, you can have just for 1 hectare, more than 150 species, and which is very huge in terms of competition and so on. Then the way to move all those resources to fit the standards and also to get them value is not easy. Then how to proceed is first, we need to first go to the local communities where the community used to, you know, they have cultural and indigenous knowledge on those resources. Then first understand the meaning of these resources to communities and how, according to the, experience, these resources used to the uses, the form of usage. Then you need to translate all those into the research questions and the research proposal, research protocol, and come to now the university research center and start working in partnership, of course, with colleagues which are also interested by also such type. But what is very tricky is policy support, the policy. You know, in our countries in Africa, we have some main crops on which we focus the energy. In Benin, it is cotton. In Cote d'Ivoire, it's cocoa, coffee. In Ghana, it may be cocoa, banana, and so on. Then they don't get really a priority from the policy maker, which limit the efforts of research and everything. Then how are we going to move all those to the system already? That's why we.
Can I ask you in between? Let's say you have the research and you know how to do it, and how to bring that to scale. What I see as a danger is then the local communities might not be the ones to have the gain from that and benefit from that, because it might then be companies that come from elsewhere, isn't it? So how do you make sure that actually it is the local communities and it's also like contributing to the SDGs in terms of poverty alleviation and also reducing inequality? I think of SDG 10.
Yes, more and more. This is Nagoya. More and more we need to think about the bottom, because they are the one who have the knowledge. We keep this knowledge and we try best to add science. To add value to the knowledge. Now, how to go back is, as I have shown, for Baobab, we noticed that it is very, very easy. It's not easy at the beginning, but we try to grow. In home gardens, we try to process the product of Baobab. Then we go back to the community to establish such type of, demonstration plot and so on. It is the only way we try to go back and get them benefits from our research activities. Just come back and try to help them improving a bit the way. Now, before, for instance, to dry the leaves, they just put it on the sun and so on. But now based on the research, we know that it's better to do it like this, and then we develop part sheets, we develop a kind of communication strategies, and go back then just to explain. It's only the way, not money to go back to them, but it is just like a kind of improve the way of the procedures and so on.
This sounds really encouraging, actually. To kind of avoid these traps that may open on the way as you bring them to these products to scale. Another issue really is issues of modern natural science and the breeding things, and the danger that we have seen with tissue culture, for instance, and thinking of genetic diversity, not really knowing about the genetic diversity that we have with certain species. In the morning session, we saw a nice work actually on genetic diversity of one of the main NTFPs in a West African context. So tissue culture is, of course, promising, but it's also a trap in terms of genetic diversity. It might create bottlenecks, really, that is something to think about. And what landscapes do we create? We saw that nicely with the Water Honeybee work, actually, and it's a mosaic of different land use patterns, actually. It's not the huge monocultures, not what the Cerrado now looks like in most of the areas, but it's a more fine-scale mosaic that we learned. It was called moderately degraded, but we could also call it a mosaic, a landscape mosaic, or a land use mosaic. I guess that would you agree that we could use what you call moderately degraded is more of a mosaic of different land use types and more open?
Yeah, it's mostly the sheep there.
Yeah.
So mosaic we have an ecological system.
Yeah.
we have problems and fruit trees, which is with existing or problems and natural vegetation changes. That would be a movement.
Right, yeah, and that would be a promising way and would fulfill a number of needs that arise. So I think we're actually done with, and if you're fine with that, I would like to thank all the speakers with excellent presentations. Thanks also to Sairam for the patience that you showed. We were so happy that we just caught the window of opportunity where we could really see your whole presentation. And thanks
Thank you.
and to all your questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, with East Africa. I work in Ethiopia quite a bit.